Good afternoon, everyone. There are a few more people here than there were at 7 a.m. this morning when we started. But I would like to welcome everybody to Pocatello and thank Idaho State University for hosting the meeting over the next 2 days. The board concluded its discussion this morning and took no action on the matters discussed. Moving along.
Mr. President, may I make a motion to amend the agenda?
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. The first thing is according to or pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061B, to add an executive session tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Are you going to do two separate motions?
No, thank you. And to remove the item, the ESSA plan amendment from the SDE agenda item.
Okay, we have a motion, second from Callie. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Superintendent, I believe the next agenda item is yours.
Thank you very much, and I'm just going to take 30 seconds to organize my stacks. I believe we have a slide that was included in your board material, but if you're like me and like also paper to take notes on, I'm going to send around the exact copy of that just on paper, so take one and pass it on. I appreciate the opportunity to lead the discussion on where we are with federal changes as it relates to K-12. Clearly, we've been following and will continue to follow all educational changes from the federal level. And we can certainly throw in higher ed if appropriate. But to start a discussion about where and if our board is interested in applying for waivers. So just by way of history and where we are and what's happened in the past, the Board of Education is recognized by the state, by the federal government as the state educational agency, and we submit the Federal Accountability Plan, which is a required element for all states in the country. And from time to time, there have been asks as the Federal Education Act that was originally, I think, 1964 has been reauthorized over time. It now is in the provisions that we have. And we have an ability as a state to ask for updates to our plan, to change our plan, to change goals or targets, so long as we have that plan in place. And there have been, over time, opportunities to ask the federal government to waive certain elements or certain things. And with the changes in the administration and the efforts and plans around changing or doing away with the Federal Department of Education as it exists now, I thought that it would be timely for us as a board in this setting to have a discussion on what that looks like and what's available to us. And I think this is one of the most clear ways for us to take a look at what we might consider if we determine that it makes sense for the outcomes in our state to apply for some of those waivers. So in the past few months, one of the questions that I get asked frequently about the changes at the federal level pertain to, well, what if this goes away? Do you still have to do that? And so understanding the differences between administrative rule or guidance and what are congressional acts, I think are very important. And so again, using this chart of sorts, you can see those things that would be available for states to request waivers on. And I would go a little bit more detailed and say of the things that I've looked at, and I've been able to go to Washington, D.C. a couple of times, most recently last week, to more clearly understand what are the goals for the states. If the goal is to have the states be more of the leader and take away less of the bureaucracy, what does it mean when we say that these waivers are on the table? I think I would really capture it by saying that the waivers are very much focused on making sure that the state or the federal government isn't asking for a duplication of things. So I don't think any of us would, well, I'll look at accountability, and I guess this is why we're having the discussion, but I think all of us believe in accountability as a principle, that is something that we want to have in our state. Some states have developed a separate accountability plan than what they send into the federal government, and would argue that, hey, our state's accountability program, we believe is better suited at driving to those outcomes. We believe we get better information than the thing that we've turned in that's federally required. And so in that case, asking the federal government to allow them to use their state accountability plan as the major accountability plan rather than the federal plan. And so to see these on here, I want to put a little finer point around, you can, I mean, are we looking at waiving all of accountability? No, what we're talking about are the accountability measures and what our state looks at. And so I think anything that looks duplicative or redundant that we're doing in parallel lanes is something that would be on the table for the discussion, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that. I think one of the other important aspects of this federal discussion also centers on abilities within the federal regulations, that there was already some flexibility that perhaps we haven't taken full advantage of, like any system or anything that's been in place for a long time. We tend to do things the same way because that's just how we've done it. So, cue the Fiddler on the Roof song. And so with the attention where we have it now at the federal level, we must ask ourselves and ask our LEAs, our local educational agencies, meaning districts and charters, within the abilities that you have already, are you maximizing the opportunities? I think a lot of attention has gone on, hey, here are all these things that can be waived. I want to have that same equal attention to the ability that we already have that maybe we aren't taking full advantages of. And that would exist within our title programs. There's money that can be set aside. There's money that can be directed in other ways. There's dollars that come into the state that the state can set aside. And then as it gets distributed down to the local level, there are some things that they can do differently. And I see that as a function and a role that we have at the Department of Education to help our local leaders understand what's already available that you don't have to go ask about. You don't have to ask the state, you don't have to ask the federal government. What are we leaving off of the table? Waivers are good for 4 years. I'm just going to give you a little bit of the process. If something is waived, and if we had asked before to have something waived, they last for 4 years. There are some requirements once the waiver is submitted by the state educational agency. There are so many days that the federal government has to look at that and let you know. And there's obviously a formal way that we go about that includes not just a discussion, but public comment. And certainly during the process of public comment, we want to include folks at all levels, policymakers, the governor, legislators, our local leaders. And so there is a process to do that. It's also an opportunity for us to take a look at overall where we are with the accountability plan. Have things changed in the last year or two? I want to say it was last year, I've lost track of the time. Last year we took a look at what the targets and the goals were. Is that something that we still believe in? So as we contemplate where we go from here, knowing that we're starting a new school year in a couple of months, and that sounds wrong, but here, starting again, we recognize that we won't be getting into, we're not going into something where we're going to ask our districts or even give them, the federal government, all of that process time isn't going to give them enough of a lead-in time to make even small changes a couple months before school starts. So we're looking at a timeline if we wanted to make changes that perhaps we do something, I would recommend in the fall, give the federal government the opportunity before the new year to say yay or nay, or we like this, but we don't like that. And then it allows us to then go back to our local districts and charters and say, here are some things that we're going to do differently at the state, or here are opportunities that you have. And so I want to share a few questions with you that I think really capture and maybe will help kickstart the discussion. So when we think of the federal government and the things that we're asked to do and that are required, here's some things that we want to ask ourselves at the state level. So is our state vision or our big education, or what are our big state visions or big education goals? And is it helped or hindered by what we're asked to do? If we could do more, what would those things be if changes were allowed? Is there something that's keeping us, some big change we'd really like to do that we think fits into one of these boxes? I think another question that we ask ourselves is it a congressional act or is it an administrative interpretation? And frankly, we get rolled up into that because we sometimes act and look like the federal government on our end because of state things that we have to push down. And we get asked to interpret that as well. Is that what the law says, or is that an interpretation of administration? And so I think going back to this, what are our big education goals? Are we doing things already in the state and that we think we're doing better than the format or the platform that the federal government says we have to submit? And if that's the case, let's talk about those and see what that looks like. And are there things that we would like to add in, things that we would like to take away? And through the efforts of just overall state efficiencies, the latest statute that, well, I guess it'll go into effect July 1, around finding efficiencies within the agencies, I think that the timing is appropriate, or it's timely for our board to also have some of these conversations. And so again, as you look at this, and I will invite the conversation on what you're looking for, what are some of those standards. I captured what I think has been what our goals or what our conversations have centered on over the last couple of years around K-12, trying to, again, to capture where we want to go with this when we talk about what's our big picture. The board's mission statement talks about a student-centered system, and I believe that takes in K-12, not just higher ed. It's a student-centered system that we've wanted to be student-focused. We've also wanted to be career-connected, finding those pathways for success. What does that look like? How do we provide the relevancy and those foundational skills that our student need? I think that we have also talked a lot about how we empower parents and how we empower our students and empowering others within the system to help support that student-centered system. Certainly, we have prized and use as a standard accountability, and I think that accountability is a responsibility that we owe to our state, to our students, and to our families. We talk a lot about achievement and growth towards achievement. How are we measuring that? What are we doing? And I throw these out as you look at this or look at your paper to say, are there things within here that that we need to change or not change, or we feel like we're doing a good job with. Having our students be highly competitive along the whole spectrum takes in the foundations of reading and literacy, the foundations of math, those really kind of getting back to basics, those fundamental skills that our students need to have in order to be highly competitive. And I had also included transparency on there. That's another important element of what our board does. We're a public board, we're a constitutional board, and our policies and how we implement them are intended to have attention. We want them to have attention because we want to have that focus on the implementation of what we believe helps our students to succeed. So that's how I would like to, I mean, there's more that I guess that I could get into, but I say this to set the table as we talk about what's important to you when you think about education big picture. What are those things that you would like to see on the K-12 side? What would you like to see maintained? What do you think, could be done differently? And then as we talk about this, I'm also, along with you and others, having additional conversations with the groups that I've mentioned before on what they want to see. And so my hope would be that at our August meeting, I would be able to bring some recommendations back to this group. And I would hope that you would also have similar conversations, that we could then put those things on the table and make a determination. We believe that in order to achieve these big educational goals, here are some things that we can adjust, or here are some things that we can go and talk to the federal government about changing. And then the last thing before I listen would be around assessments. We've had a lot of conversations around assessments, and since Linda and I have been on the board, we're 10 years and 11 years at this point. Many of our conversations have said we would do it like this were it not for some of the federal requirements around there. And I think we have an opportunity now to discuss that, whether it's looking differently at how we assess in high school, or to me, a glaring example of a state doing something that's duplicative of the requirement for the federal government assessment in third grade. So in third grade, we test everybody in ISAT, but we're one of, not all states, but one of some states who test all third graders for reading. And so that may be a place that we might say to the federal government, hey, we are assessing our third graders already in this way because we believe for third grade this is the very most important thing. Do we want to look at waiving ISAT? And I think there's different ways to talk about that as well. And so I throw all of that out there and ask that you give me a list of things that we can take note of. And as we have more conversations, again, with the goal to come back in the August meeting to really talk about recommendations. Today is let's talk about where we want to go and if the federal government is hindering that or not, and what that might look like. So, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good overview. Comments? Dr. Clark?
Mr. President, to your point, Superintendent, I think it's very important that we have a strong measure for the board's goals, which is reading proficiency by third grade, increasing the math scores for our middle grades, graduation rate, go-on rate. I don't believe that we need, as you said, multiple measures to do that. I think it would be really helpful to our schools, our districts, if we had a single measure of grade K through 3. We don't need to double up on third grade. Likewise with math. For the high school, I've long been an advocate of multiple tests that allow students to be tested in the pathway that they're going to go. And the example there is that we have increasing numbers of students exercising the options in CTE, those assessments ought to count for them, and then have academic assessments for those who have chosen a different pathway. So from my perspective, that's a place for us to start. It's something we've been talking about, as you said, for a very long time. But we need to make sure that whatever assessments we have give us the data we need to, or the board needs rather, to make sure that we're able to measure toward our own goals.
If I can add one note on the assessment piece, we're in the process of doing an inventory, I guess that's probably the best word, of how our districts are currently assessing. Many times we hear, if not frequently, one of the criticisms around public education is, there's so many tests. And my response back to that is the state has one test. We do, it's at the end of the year. But there are a lot of tests that are given. And when we look at that summative test at the end of the year for ISAT, one of the things that we hear is, well, it doesn't inform instruction, or how useful is that if you're getting the information at the end of the year. So we're also looking at, in addition to what and how are we testing, how frequently, how valuable are those, and for what uses do we have the tests in place. But I think another thing that we can consider too, and this doesn't take the federal government, but a timeliness of when the ISAT information is returned to parents. And I can absolutely agree with the feelings of, if I'm getting my child's assessment scores, last day of school is part of a report card, or in the middle of the summer, yeah, that's not helpful to me. Nor is it helpful to the teacher that had the child exiting their class. And so as we open this up, that's why I say equal to, hey, there's a lot of things going on at the federal government. We have an opportunity to also review how we're doing it, and promoting and driving towards best practices around what we are assessing, when, and the timeliness of how we get that important information to teachers and to parents.
Yeah, David.
So Debbie, so I'm going to need you to hook me up with somebody that can give me a tutorial on the assessments that happen in the K through 12.
I know people
yeah.
can help you.
And I don't want to ask too many questions until I'm a little bit better informed, but do you have some internal suggestions that you've developed on how we might modify from what the federal standards are or what we've been doing to date?
I think there's some worthiness around the third grade reading, taking a look at that. I think anytime we have any test become the test, it does change the feel of that test. So right now we use IRI in the spring and the fall, and our teachers like that. It helps with what they need to know. And I think that's a consideration. Do we change the feel of the IRI because now it becomes the accountability measure? I don't know, but I think it's worth talking about. Like Linda, we've talked quite a bit about our students choosing a test that is more meaningful to them at the high school setting. So the federal government says you must test all of your students in grades 3 through 8, and they don't care what the test is so long as it's aligned to your standards and it's college and career ready. And then once in high school. And so our board has determined 11th grade that ISAT is that test. And so I think when we talk about that meaningfulness, and knowing that this past session, we put forward a change, our board put forward a change to the legislature around high school graduation requirements that will direct our districts and charters to come up with pathways to graduation. It would follow that we might entertain that along those pathways, a one-size-fits-all assessment may not fit that model. Now, looking at what the accountability of metrics and data, I don't know if you can do crosswalks. I mean, there's some considerations, but I guess I would start with those two places around assessments.
Okay. Well, if you could hook me up with the right
Absolutely.
staff member
Yep.
or members to get me up to
Yes,
speed, I'd
I've
appreciate
written,
it.
got, yeah, of course.
Sean? Oh, Callie?
Any concerns about that these waivers would be good for just 4 years? Or does that worry you at all? I just worry that we wouldn't maybe have the data for the 4-year period and the waivers wouldn't be extended beyond that, but.
I don't know. I think it's a consideration. I guess I don't know that I've, necessarily worried about it. But I think as we discuss, these are important things to bring out so that we're fully aware of what we, if we do something, what that looks like and what that means.
Is there federal money, Debbie, attached to some of these main areas? In other words, that you have to actually have documented, let's just take interventions. I mean, is there federal money that goes towards intervention that is, that you're required to have these requirements outlined on how you're going to deal with it? Or
Yes, and
so if you got a waiver, would you be asking then for that to be distributed sort of a block grant and give us more flexibility in terms of how we spend that?
I don't know if the waiver allows you, I'm trying to think of what that document looks like, if it gives you the ability to ask how the funds come to you. I think it's more about how you fulfill that requirement. So in the place of assessments, because we're required, there's dollars that come in that frankly, even with the federal requirement and the dollars, we still have to ask our legislature for spending authority on that. And this last year, we asked for spending authority, and we got authority for a quarter of that. Those things that has implications as to type of assessments that that you can choose. And so I think as we look at and watch what's happening on the federal level, how they're considering block grants coming to us. For now, I would leave our discussion, not that the money isn't important, but what is it about what we're doing that we would like either changes or to replace, rather than replacing how the money comes.
Sean? Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Superintendent, for bringing these forward. I would echo the comments you've already heard about testing. I know I hear from my district, or the districts in legislative district 1. The testing requirements, there's too many. They don't necessarily, particularly in the rural areas, don't necessarily have the updated computers to be able to conduct those tests. So thank you for your focus on that. If we can be more efficient, but still reach the goals that we've set. And then also ensure that our districts, if we're requiring this testing, help our districts to be able to secure what they need to conduct those tests. I had one mother tell me, well, all my kid is learning to do is to tap the right button on the computer. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can read or not read. So I would share that. I'm sure you've heard that too. And then the other one is it's been a long time since I've looked at Title 33, but, and so this may not be a federal issue, but maybe it's timely to throw in the conversation since we're doing a high-level review. It's the number of requirements that we're asking our districts to fulfill versus the time they have in the day. And so we've got a lot of requirements we're supposed to meet, so they can't have fill in the blank because we just don't have enough time in the day to fit one more thing in there because of what we're required to do. So you've also heard that, I'm sure.
Yes, and we're in the middle, and maybe closer to the end rather than the middle of doing that ourselves. One of the most onerous reports on the federal side is for the Office of Civil Rights. It takes a long time for our districts to go through that, and so one of the things that we're looking at, and you can see on there, that is not one of the things that can be waived. And so how we talk about, we're not, saying we don't want to do it, but can we do it in a more efficient way that's not as time-consuming? And we have LEAs that's the job of a person. And it means they can't hire other positions because of what's required in getting those things done. And so we're saying, can we still fulfill the intent of what's required, but can we do that in a better managed way? I wanted to mention that in 2020, you may recall that our board, along with other states, Idaho, I should say, our state, along with other states, did ask for a waiver of testing for the obvious reason. And so that's, to my knowledge, since the Educational Act came into place, that, across the board, our board did ask for the ISAT to be waived, again, for the obvious reason, along with, and I thank Allison Hankin for helping refresh my memory on this, but we also asked for a waiver on something that's called TSI identification and its targeted support and improvement, how we report on certain subgroups, for the obvious reason. But that was just for that year, and then it was, everyone, needs to get back to where they were.
Yeah, to me, it's the more our data can be focused on actually changing performance in the classroom and informing our teachers so they can become better teachers. If the data isn't doing that, it's not really adding real value. I guess there is some value in having a summative assessment like an ISAT at the end of the year, and you get the results 2 weeks from now, and the Idaho Statesman can write an article about whether we're winning or losing, but it's not actually helping us get better, So to the extent, and that's what I worry about all the stuff we provide the federal government. I mean, what possibly is the U.S. Department of Education going to do with the data we provide them? There's nothing they can do. And so I guess I would just encourage us, as we think about assessments, to lean towards assessments, and you comment on this, that provide more formative feedback that really inform what's going on in the classroom today, so teachers and principals can continuously improve. That's where I think our focus has to be.
So the summative assessments and the reason, I guess, behind that I understand for states to test is so that there can be a comparison within the state, that how do we know how all students are doing on the same assessment? And I think there's some value to that, but as we look at all assessments and what role they have, how does this one factor into it? And then you look at the NAEP test that is also a federal requirement for 4th and 8th graders. It's another way for the federal government they have their apples to apples at the federal or the national level.
And don't get me wrong, I think that I wouldn't want to see us not participate in NAEP, and actually one of my big concerns with some of the changes that are going on at the U.S. Department of Education is that those resources that were actually managing the NAEP program would disappear and we wouldn't have that data, because I do think that's really informative data so that we as a state can understand how we're performing relative to everybody else.
I haven't seen that one on the list of not to be funded.
Yeah. But I'm sort of where Dr. Clark is, and I think you are too, in terms of how we assess our secondary students. I just think it needs to be much more aligned to pathways. I just think in some ways testing everybody against the ISAT reinforces the perception I still think we fight, which is, there was a time where people thought when we said we want 60% of people to go on, that what we were saying is that 60% had to go on to college. That's not what we think. Everybody needs post-secondary education. All those pathways are important. We should be assessing students based on the pathway they choose and how they want to lead their lives, and the skills you need to go to a 4-year school are different than what you need to go into the military or be an apprentice. And I think we should be measuring that and not asking every kid to fit into one box, or every student to fit into one box. Yes, Dr. Clark?
Just one other comment, and that is it's important for us to remember that the summative tests do not do the job of informing instruction. It's the formative testing tied to the curriculum, which, we had one brief moment in history here when we had what was called level testing, which said to the teacher for every student, here's where your student currently is in terms of the curriculum for reading or math, and here is the next thing he or she needs to do to grow. And it measured the growth with the intent that every student would grow every year. That's the power of the testing that you don't have in the summative tests.
Well, I'm not hearing anyone say no tests, so that's a good thing, I believe.
And we're not, you mentioned in your comments that there's some states who have a different accountability system within the state, which is different than what they report to the federal government. We're not one of those, right? We have alignment in that regard. Is that right?
Correct. So I can tell you of one state, Arkansas recently realigned their targets, benchmarks, and their accountability system to more fit the scoring around NAEP tests. Iowa is also going that direction, and in fact, when I learned this, I had reached out to Allison Hankin again and said, has that even been on the table for us, that we have some alignment with, what those assessments look like. Now, in both cases of those states, to do that, it takes takes a lot of courage, because the measuring is not the same. The measuring stick is not the same. And so when you align with NAEP, it's going to drop, for most states, it's going to drop you down below, where you've been. And so there's an ownership that has to come to say, look, here's an alignment that we want to make, and there's going to be an associated change in how we look at those numbers. And so I'm getting more details, and I'm not saying that that's the way to go, but I think as states are considering different ways to measure, that one intrigued me, that they were, trying to be aligned in some of those ways.
Do you want to you recently traveled the state and had some of these conversations more at the local level. Is there any takeaways from those trips that you want to share with the board? Or?
The third grade part is a popular, if that's the right term to use, a well-supported idea on the table. Many have said, at the third grade level, ISAT becomes a test of how well you can test, perhaps not how much you know, and that it is a lot of testing for a third grader, considering that the district or charter is also assessing throughout the year in their own ways. And I think generally supportive around the high school idea, all supportive around doing something that's meaningful, whether or not it's a customized or personalized choice that you make with your assessment. Across the board support for having an assessment at the high school level that is meaningful and valuable to the student, rather than, well, the state says we have to do this. Show up, take it, doesn't matter what you get on it, we just have to check the box. So across the board, that was discussed. We had some other ideas that were put out, and again, we invited the discussion of, hey, there's no wrong thing to say, we're just talking. There were things thrown out that were maybe the state does follow the lead of NAEP, and you test ISAT 4th and 8th grade. Now, you have to ask for a waiver on something like that, but when you're talking about just differences or different ways to assess. Another suggestion was, what if you test ELA in 3rd grade and then math in 4th, ELA 5th, math in 6th? Again, you have to request a waiver on something like that. But thinking about, I think that what the takeaway for me was our local leaders are having these same kinds of conversations as well. What's valuable in what we put forward? What is it that we want to know? What's the data? And then how do we use that to be better at serving kids?
Sort of a philosophical question, but maybe a broader question is, how prescriptive do you need to be at the state level around this, or should we be trying to create the flexibility where then local school districts can make the best choice for their district? I mean, at the end of the day, we all know the local district is where continuous improvement is driven. And if, I'm not sure every district needs to do the same thing. I mean, what works for one may not work for the other. And maybe we learn by having the multiple different models out there, maybe you are able to look and say, hey, this one is better than that one. I don't know. Right now we're very prescriptive, right? We say, this is how you have to do it. And it's consistent across the whole state. And I don't know if that's right or wrong.
Well, and you can see why we do that. So right. And I think that, part of the discussion here too does relate to that. What is the role of the Board of Education as it relates to what's happening? There is some areas within the Federal Educational Act, it's something called EdFlex, where for certain things, we as the SEA can give waivers, if you want to call that, to an LEA. I know there's so many acronyms, local education agencies, and so we're looking at that. Is that something that we need to have on the table that has been around and available? I think there's only 2 states, don't quote me on that, but I want to say 2 states that have applied for with the federal government this ed flexibility. It's a provision that states can apply for that has existed. But a lot of these things haven't kind of come up to the top or to come up to the surface, because we have a tendency to get very mired in, well, this is what we have to do, this is what we have to, how we have to do it, rather than here's our parameters, what are all the things we can do within the box. And so we're also taking a look at that and would bring those things back to you in August as well.
Other questions or comments for the superintendent? So my understanding is you're going to work this issue with various constituents and come back to this board with a recommendation?
Yes, if that's agreeable to this group. I wanted to, and I met with the governor several weeks ago. He cares as much or more about education as we do, obviously. And I had a similar conversation with him. We want to start with folks, and we wanted to start with the governor of, what are your thoughts and what do you think, and come to this board. And I've also been, again, we went to every single region a month ago, having conversations with local leaders. I've been having conversations with legislators. We'll continue to do that throughout the summer, and others to get a sense of where we are. And I haven't talked to anyone that says accountability isn't important. There are these themes that we agree that assessing is a good thing. Accountability is a good thing. Clearly, transparency and reporting are a good thing. How do we do that well within each of those categories? And if there are limitations, let's talk about them. And if there's opportunities, let's take advantage of them.
I think this board's been pretty clear in terms of what our priorities are from a transparency and accountability standpoint. That Dr. Clark mentioned them earlier, 3rd grade literacy, middle grade math, on-time graduation. I don't see this board shifting in terms of what we view as the most important priorities and having transparency and accountability around those. And I guess we look forward to the August meeting and what you bring forward.
Well, and that's how I'm seeing it as well, as an opportunity for us to look inward and question ourselves and say, have we not taken advantage of things that we could have? What are again, the opportunities and the areas that we can improve that frankly don't have to have a mother may I from the federal government? And I think I know that we're finding some of those, and we'll bring those back, all, again, with the goal of ensuring all the priorities that we talk about month to month.
Great, thank you.
All right. And now the agenda, or the SDE, was there something else within?
Nope, you still have the floor.
Okay, to my right paper here. I just wanted to spend a few minutes on updating the board on a few items. Let me just switch gears here. It's going to make adjustments just based on time, and so I may quickly move through a couple of things here. Speaking of assessment, this spring was the first time that we were able to pilot the new vendor that we have for the IRI. So as a point of just information, the Idaho Reading Indicator is what we call the assessment that we give K-3, and we go out to a procurement process to get a vendor for that test. And this last year, we did that. We do have a new company that we're working with. It's called Emira. And in the spring, the plan was to keep the existing assessment and then pilot to see what needed to be tweaked or fixed. And so there were 1,500 students that participated in the pilot across 7 campuses in Idaho. And we'd like to go back and then ask, hey, what went well? What did you like? What are some of the key points? So that as we prepare to roll out every student in the state in the fall with the new IRI, we've kind of worked out some of the bugs before we get there. So just as a review, the educators with the new assessment, they liked that it was adaptive and could adjust, and that was a feature of sorts that we had before. This one is improved from what we hear, that it's even more improved. Our educators also noted that students found the test more engaging, and that there was a more interactive nature where students were able to speak into a microphone rather than just read and click. That was something that was noted. And also that it was shorter, and that matters. So we're not making it so short that it's statistically invalid, but there is a sweet spot where at some point we got what we need to know where you are, and we don't need you to take a 5-hour test in order to figure that out. And so, of course, for our little people, I think that's really important. Our educators were also excited that this assessment focused more on reading and oral fluency rather than, again, just clicking on something, read and click. In the fall, as I mentioned, everyone will be taking this. We have changed the testing window for the fall to get folks into school and allow educators and others time to practice a little bit before with a new platform. And so the testing window this fall will start in October rather than starting August 1. So we want get people comfortable and again, students time to interact, excuse me, with the test before they get going. Something that I would point out that I think is really important, this assessment, something that is different, is that it is more definitively aligned with our standards and more developmentally appropriate. And that was something that we felt strongly about when we went out to see, what tests were available, so that as we get these IRI scores and information back, talking about making data more meaningful and valuable to us, we can point to our own state standards and know how our children are performing in Idaho on our standards that have been approved through the legislative process. The big difference for the test that was piloted and that will come in the fall is that is a criterion reference. You remember we've talked quite a bit about the difference of norm and criterion reference. That was something else that we looked for in a new assessment. As a reminder, when the 5 years were up on the norm reference test and we started this last fall on another norm, we went from showing 75% proficiency in reading to 69%, only because we changed the test. And so we don't want those things happening with the data. We want to have a through line. We want to make sure that we're always assessing students based on what they know, not on how the questions have changed in other states, and now this is where Idaho compares on a line or on a curve to somebody else. So I think that is a fantastic part of what we're doing. We typically calculate from fall to spring, but because this spring we had the existing IRI and in the fall we will have the new, we will have to readjust how we do that, and so we will be doing a spring to spring rather than a fall to spring. And then we'll get back on, to the regular schedule, and we can show that. So as the spring scores come out next month, we'll be getting those out and having a conversation about that. Any questions or comments?
So are we basically snapping a new chalk line here in terms of being able to measure improvement, or will we be able to kind of compare the results in this new assessment with what the results in the old assessment?
I'm going to let Greg tackle that. He's been neck deep in all of it, so.
Mr. President, so we will be able to make that.
I don't think your microphone's on.
No, it's not. We will be able to make that comparison. I think because the Idaho Reading Indicator is considered a high-stakes assessment, because half of the $72 million distribution is based on that, it's just important to make sure there's a very clear apples-to-apples comparison with the same assessment. But the skills that are assessed in the norm referenced Idaho Reading Indicator, they're very comparable to what is going to be assessed in the new criterion reference assessment, which again, that's going to be grounded in our K-3 early literacy standards. And again, as Superintendent Critchfield mentioned, that's been something we've been talking about for the last year or so, not having those drastic changes every 5 years when the norms gets changed, but having the same kind of baseline where we can compare 2025 with future cohorts of students and where they sit relative to our standards.
And I appreciate Greg calling out the fact that the literacy dollars are partly based on outcomes. It's discussed a lot that our system isn't doing anything to drive towards outcomes, and we do have areas where the distribution of those dollars is tied to the growth and performance of students, and this is one of those areas.
Okay. Go ahead, David.
Does this still give you baselines to national standards so you can compare state to state?
So the new Amira test, and just for clarification, the IRI as it previously existed, it's going away. iStation was acquired by Amira, who's our new vendor. So that assessment's going away. But they are going to provide both a norm reference score and then that Idaho-based criterion reference score. So to your question, yeah, we'll be able to make those comparisons.
Thank you.
And while we're talking about reading, we are very pleased that the legislature supported dollars going into literacy coaches for the coming years. And as we gear up to have reading coaches available for our elementary schools this fall, this is my plug to remind, we've got a link where educators can apply to be coaches. And so as a reminder, the legislation will allow the department to hire coaches. So this is not money that flows directly to any school district. So we have regional math centers, we've got building capacity helpers. It's a similar model where the Department of Education will get the coaches trained in the science of reading. It's actually called smart coaching, but fundamentally it's training coaches in phonics. And so one of the questions is, well, aren't our universities doing that? Yes. For teachers that are not currently in college, everyone else, we want to provide this coaching model. It is not something that you watch online. It is not a book that you read. It is a real life person that will help teachers be able to make adjustments, best practices, and also someone that a teacher can call and with some confidence, be vulnerable to that person because they're not working in that district. Hey, how come this isn't working? You know, how do I do that? The way the legislation reads, we are prioritizing. So the question is, where do the coaches go initially into our districts and charters? It's prioritized starting with those that are in the bottom 25%. And so we want to help support those that need a little bit extra. The ultimate goal is to have all of our K-3 educators receiving this professional development within the next 3 years. We can confidently connect the dots that when our teachers are trained in the SMART program, which again is the foundational piece is the science of reading, that there are results. And we're seeing that all over the place. I think, you know, anyway, I've shared some highlights of other places around the state, but I wanted to give you an update on what that looks like. The dollars become available July 1, but we're in the process of accepting applications now.
And are these coaches coming out of the classroom typically?
They could, yes, and we're hoping that we can also get retired educators to be a part of this. We've got people who have a lot of experience and wisdom that have a lot to offer and support their colleagues. Greg, have I missed anything in that?
I'll just add, this would be the third cohort of SMART of SMART teachers or teachers that participate in the science of reading professional development. We estimate there's around 4,500 K-3 educators across the state. About 1,200 educators have currently gone through this program, and the way we've been able to fund it is through GEAR grants. I know the board's very familiar with GEAR money. The governor provided 2 buckets of GEAR funds available to us. So what we advocated for in this legislative session is where was kind of a potential missing link in our comprehensive early literacy approach. And I think that this is being able to get $5 million of ongoing funding to provide every single educator this SMART coaching, and then to be able to talk to elementary principals, but then also professionals that are entering the profession, we thought was a critical piece, and something that states that are really like Idaho doing great things in literacy already have this framework in place.
Yeah, Kelly.
We've talked before, I know, about the higher ed institutions adopting this philosophy, and it sounds like we're making progress in that area as well, so that there's consistency K through 12 with our higher ed system. Is that the case?
It is, and a perfect lead-in to the last informational item that I had. And I'm sorry to be rude as I'm flipping
Can I
through
ask one
papers.
question before you
this.
transition? So we've run the IRI data to see that there's a discernible difference in terms of the student performance for students who've been taught by teachers who've been trained versus students that have been taught by teachers that haven't been trained?
So we have the data for the SMART program. I will say that I think that's kind of what's made the difference, whether, you know, we've been able to get, again, 2 grants of GEAR dollars from the governor's office, and then what we were able to sell to the legislature. Debbie had talked about, we were able to bring school districts that could demonstrate data and percentage increases in classrooms that were provided this training. And so we're excited to scale this across the state, because then you can demonstrate that data statewide and really have kind of 2 groups that can really compare based on that student success data.
One of the examples, and I think shining spots in our state, and we've got many, and the one that I share frequently is Idaho Falls, District 91, visiting with their superintendent, Carla Lorange. They use their own general funds to get all of their teachers trained in this, and they are above 80% in their testing. And so I can't wait to see what their IRI scores look like. And it's across the board. It's at all the schools, even some of the schools that on paper you may not expect that type of achievement. And so their growth has just been exponential because they invested the time in how they prepare their teachers and how they support them in professional development. So it's exciting.
And do you have a view of when we've arrived? I mean, there's, you know, obviously a certain percentage of students who are ESL students. You've got a certain number of students that have, dyslexia or other learning challenges. So 100% is probably not, I would assume, not.
Well,
real.
because
But
some
what-
students
but-
are also nonverbal
Yeah, yeah.
and, not able to, but
So you have a gut read on, this is where if we're really doing a great job in literacy across the state, where we would be?
I think
Sort of mid-80s?
I would, or 90%. I mean, I think that those are attainable and great targets, particularly when we see this input went in and here is the outcome. And as Greg said, we've got data on that. It's something that we haven't had, a very tangible thing to say. And it's not a book. I mean, if there was a book that did it, we'd buy that book for everybody. But it's curriculum that's based in the science of reading, and it absolutely goes back to how you've trained and prepared and how you support and mentor the teacher around phonics. All right, so following Callie's question, many of you will recall, and both Dr. Clark and President Liebig participated with myself on a committee that was intended to bring back recommendations around our teacher prep programs, along with recommendations recommendations from the group around how we certify and prepare superintendents and building administrators. And so I think November of last year was when we had the first meeting. We invited a wide variety of people to participate, including our institution friends and those that are charged with that, along with others, whether it was representatives from our Superintendents Association, our Teachers Association. And the impetus of that was to remove the gap, or at least narrow the gap on that preparation side to now I'm in the classroom and I'm in front of 25, 14-year-olds. And I don't know that you can all the way prepare yourself for some of those classroom moments, as Dr. Clark would know in her long experienced history. But as the keepers of that, as this board, I felt that it was a duty that we had to ensure that we do have that alignment, that how we're teaching and how we're preparing our students accomplishes that goal. And then I think equal to that, do we as a board want to develop or have standards so that regardless of where you're graduating, as far as the public institutions are concerned, there's an expectation that you will have had exposure, training, time with the most important elements. Part of what informed this committee was just being out and talking to teachers, and consistent themes kept coming up. Our teachers need more strategies around classroom behaviors and classroom management. Our students and frankly our parents are looking for more time and training around special education. What does that look like? We hear and know more teachers who, because they've been removed from the college experience, they got no exposure to online education. And in 2020, we know everyone was dumped into that. Well, we're 5 years out of that, and many of our teachers don't feel any more prepared now to do that. And yet we see increasingly more districts and charters coming up with online options as parents want more flexibility. And so I will share with you, and then I'll share with you the recommendations on the teacher part, and then invite Linda and Kurt to jump in, and then I'll get to the admin. There were themes that came out of the group work that really center around, I would say 4 things, with mentoring topping that list. More opportunities to strengthen our mentoring and our coaching system. And some of this is tied to funding, but not all, but developing statewide guidance for mentors, continuing our statewide mentoring platform, and then piloting instructional and peer coaching models across districts. And so as we I'm going to put the recommendations out there, and then we can come back and say, how do we tackle these, and how do we now operationalize the recommendations? But looking at, coaching and peer mentorship as critical parts of this, we want to support and incentivize student teaching, giving them more field time, more classroom time, exploring different ways to do that. We had talked about paying for student teachers, and whether or not we pay for student teachers, that's still a requirement of the profession. We believe that there are ways to expand that so it's not at the last semester as the culmination, but you have more opportunity to go and practice something that you've learned and then come back and say why that didn't work or why it did work. That will help strengthen that. We can talk about, again, field work, the preparation pathways, aligning our outcomes or standards across all PPs and all EPPs, and also improving training on evaluation frameworks for our teachers, like the Danielson model. And then the last area, kind of broad area, is refining our data collection to see what the experiences are like, that customer feedback part. And we've had a little bit of that, which kind of drove this, but how are we making informed decision making? What does certification look like? And then one of the recommendations centered around freeing up the 30 credits that you have to have within your major, allowing 10 of those to be more flexible for the individual teachers depending on the type of program or classroom that they're going to go in, not making it a one-size-fits-all within those 30 credits. Linda, Kurt, for the educator piece, what would you add?
You may have mentioned this and I just missed it when you were talking. There's a lot of discussion too around equipping educators with conflict resolution strategies to deal with some of the behavioral issues in the classroom. I don't know if you mentioned that in your.
I mentioned the behaviors in classroom management. I didn't get into the sub-points, but I think those are return conversations. We just wanted to present the recommendations, and then I would suggest we could come back on what does that look like? How do we operationalize that from our end? What do the institutions need? Clearly making adjustments is time and money, but we could talk about that further.
I think the 10 credits that are flexible are a very positive thing, giving the student teachers more options to choose, moving away from the one-size-fits-all kind of model. I thought that was a powerful suggestion.
All right. Well, that's, again, high level of recommendations around the educator side. The goal of it is that our educators feel as prepared as possible for the modern classroom. That's going to look different than it has been 5 years ago, and it's going to be different in 5 years from now. 2 years. 2 years from now. And there was I don't remember, just a couple hours ago, someone made the comment about this slow-moving ship that we have in education, and we simply can't, well, we've got to break off a little speedboat for our education preparation programs so that we can be more responsive and receptive to the changing needs of the classrooms, as our kids need different things in different ways. And I don't think anyone argues that. That's why we don't look exactly the same as we did in the 1800s, because our times are different. And as we recognize that and say out loud publicly, we see that the modern classroom has different needs, different requirements. Let's make sure that we're not years off of our teachers that are graduating for their preparation. All right, administrators. I'm going to give a little background on this one as well. During the legislative session, You likely were paying attention to legislation that was brought forward to allow boards to consider other candidates in their hiring pools, very similar to what charter schools are able to do. And so the intention or the motive behind it was to allow that across the board in traditional schools as well. And the legislation made its way over into the Senate. It got stalled out there, and in talking with the representative that had brought it forward, I shared with him that our board had a subcommittee that was doing some work on this very thing, recognizing many of the same challenges that the legislation was intended to address. That we are trying to create a deeper and wider pool for leaders, that in the end, we are trying to develop leaders. That's who we want in our buildings, that's who we want leading our schools or at the head of our schools. And in some cases, those leaders will come from non-traditional ways. And we have a lot of doors open for educators. We have a lot of non-traditional routes into education, and then we do some wraparounds so that we can ensure that they feel supported. And thinking of it in those terms, we asked the group to consider some ideas and recommendations around superintendents and administrators. I will tell you, because I think that it is the transparent thing to do, that as I shared these recommendations and ideas, well, first of all, not everyone in the committee loved every idea. And that's just how we do business. Not everyone loves everything all the time. Going around to all the educational regions, the group that we were talking to, our fine leaders in our school, administrators, they did not like these ideas. And that's okay. We have the charter network as an example of boards that have hired outside of traditional academic routes that are thriving. And so this is not coming out of nowhere, but like I say, in the spirit of transparency and wanting to be honest, not everyone is celebrating some of these ideas. So with that, I feel, well, I want to share that, but I also don't want to put a negative tone on it because I like the recommendations. So I will say that, and I think there are others that recognize there's a need for it. This is an option, and this is something that I shared with our current school leaders, that this doesn't obligate any board to hire anyone. Local control still reigns supreme. What it does is allows a board to consider other candidates that would have been previously excluded. And it's an option, and in some places they wouldn't consider it, and in other places around the state, this might make sense for them. And I think that fits in the spirit of local control and recognizing that it is not a one-size-fits-all everyone around the state. So with that, here are the recommendations. That you would have, that the individual that could be hired by a board would have a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution, so having a degree. That person would need to have a background check. They would need to have 5 years of experience in instructional or educational arenas, government, a nonprofit, private, or military. This is a mirror of what is allowed for charter schools already. So that I like the alignment of it. So we're not saying, hey, this is different, excuse me, than over here. The other part of this that is different than the charter school and also different than the legislation that we saw, an individual that would be hired in this circumstance would be required to have a mentor or an executive coach for 3 years. That would, again, be someone that the board would need to hire, that would be a resource, someone that they could confidentially have conversations with as they troubleshoot through things. And part of that mentoring and part of that coaching would have to take in the following areas: budget, data performance and goals, conflict management, evaluations, and board management. should a board hire a person that met those qualifications, the state would be able to issue them a certificate that would become subject to oversight of the Professional Standards Commission. That was something that the group felt strongly about, that the professional ethical standards and requirements that are in place now would also need to be in place for anyone that comes to working into a school with kids. And you would do the board would then be required to do, after 3 years of good evaluations, or the certificate would be good for 3 years, excuse me, and then after 3 years of good evaluations, the certificate could then be valid for 5 years, which would be in alignment with how we do it through traditional pathways. And then the last kind of like caveat on this would be that the board would only be able to issue that individual a 1-year contract. Sometimes things don't work out. And if a board wanted to do something different and things didn't work out on either side of it, no one's at risk of litigation or changing contracts because it wasn't a fit, and those things happen. And so I share that to say that is the main difference, that mentoring coaching piece between the charter. And it's also different than being an apprentice. This is not an apprenticeship program. And that was the change from some of the things that we've seen in the past that have been discussed, that the mentor coach provides the same type of side-by-side that you get in an apprenticeship, but this is not an apprenticeship program, that there's some clear things around that. And so the intent is to work with the legislative sponsor that brought something forward, and so we're not asking anything of the board today. Of course, you can, you can comment on it and share these recommendations and see if there's a place to work together.
And that would be for principals or any administrator? Would it include superintendents as well? Both?
Yes.
I think leadership is leadership.
And that's where I come from, is that leadership skills can be gained in a number of ways. You can learn things, and when you have some skills that are required of our leaders today, it gives boards the option to have some other people at the hiring table that they may have had to overlook in the past.
We've had this debate sometimes when we talk about universities, hiring a university president from within academia versus outside academia. And the conversation sometimes have been, well, yeah, it can work outside academia, but then it puts more, the provost who really understands the academic side of things becomes really important if you choose to go outside academia. It's sort of the same thing here. You got to figure out, if you bring in a leader into a building or superintendent who doesn't come from the classroom or doesn't have that background, you've got to figure out how to have that leadership within the building or a district around the pedagogy and the classroom, right? It just requires you to think, I think, as a local board about how to do that. But I agree, I think from a local standpoint, one size fits all doesn't work, and this, I think, will provide the flexibility that districts need to have people that recruit stronger leaders.
And I think there's some good parameters here that provide some protections on, on either side. I think Sean had her hand up.
Excuse me, thank you. I was just gonna say that one of the original thoughts when charter schools were established in Idaho, I was on the Senate Education Committee, was that the charter school system in Idaho could act as a lab. And if there were good ideas that happened, because the charters were set up separate, but they're public, but they had some benefits to operations that our local districts don't have. And this is an example of where something's working in the charter school realm that the other districts might be able to take advantage of as well. And I see this as maybe helpful in the rural areas where we don't have currently qualified administrators knocking on our doors. to take those jobs. And so I think this really is helpful. Thanks.
So. Great. So that's a limitation that's in state code that has to be modified?
Yes.
That's interesting. Hmm. Okay. I think it's a good move.
And that's it for me.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you. Oh, that is not it for me. Sorry. There is an action item. Appreciate that.
It's just informational.
I've,
It's not actual, it's less than 10.
yes, it is, and that's a
I'm gonna
great,
just
that's a
cover
Greg thing. So it literally is less it for me, but Greg.
So I'll be very brief. This is an informational item. So per Idaho code, the State Board of Education needs to approve the operations of any elementary school having less than 10 pupils in average daily attendance. And so since the late 90s, for the last 25 years plus, that authority's been delegated to the superintendent. And so there is a requirement that annually we report that. So that's what we're doing here today. In your board agenda materials lists out the 11 schools that for the 25-26 school year, so this is the upcoming school year, were approved to operate with less than 10 average daily attendance.
Questions? Okay, thank you. Now you're concluded. Perfect. Yeah. So we'll take a 5-minute break, give President Wagner an opportunity to get set up here, and when we reconvene, we will do so as the Board of Trustees for Idaho State University. Are we ready? All right, we'll reconvene the meeting. Welcome, President Wagner.
Thank you.
Thanks again for hosting us here in a beautiful day in Pocatello, in this beautiful building.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a nice asset for the campus, so it's nice to be here. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board President Liebig, members of the board, and Executive Director Jan White. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to share some of the great things happening at Idaho State University as our annual report. We have provided a robust document in your supporting materials, and I hope you have the time to review it. And I want to just make special note of how much I appreciate those of our talented staff who worked very hard to produce this material. I thought they did an excellent job. For the last academic year, Idaho State University has focused our institutional efforts and priorities on 5 areas aligned with ISU's strategic plan. These areas of focus were identified by the Bengal community with information I gathered in my Bold Path Forward listening sessions in 2024. Those areas are enrollment growth and student success, academic and research focus, enhancing physical infrastructure, external relationships and partnerships, employee engagement, and connection. And these will be the outline for my remarks this afternoon. I start with enrollment growth and student success. ISU had its highest enrollment in 10 years in the 2024-25 academic year, and all indications are that this will continue for fall of 25. That amounts to 13,477 total students who attended ISU this last fall. We expect continual increases due to many things that we are doing, one of which is on the recruiting side, enhancement to our fall recruiting efforts, literally meeting prospective students where they are with the Experience the Roar events at all of our campuses across the state. These are proving to be very successful and enhancing access to Idaho State University. In 2024, we announced the opening of the Bengal Success Center, an all-inclusive academic support center for students, as well as instructional expertise for faculty. Something that we have not talked about often enough is ISU's robust continuing education programming, which provided continuing education to over, that says 28,000 students, but the most recent update I received of this week is we have reached 35,000 students. A large portion of those students are utilizing our Albion Center, which offers 138 professional non-credit development courses. I'm also proud of our growing Include program, which is now in 28 rural high schools where we offer both dual enrollment, and with the same technology equipment, we provide telehealth and mental health in very remote and rural communities. Lastly, from survey information gathered in 2023, we learned that 88% of our graduating student respondents are employed full-time, with most being in Idaho. A real impact to the economic development of our state and the social mobility of our graduates. Focusing even more on access to higher education, ISU has recently been accepted as a First Gen Forward Network member, an accomplishment we are very proud of. ISU is committed to building a foundational understanding of first-generation student success through participation in monthly workshops, networking and professional development opportunities, sharing knowledge and resources, and contributing to a peer community. Let me tell you about Giselle Saldivar. Giselle is a first-generation student of migrant workers from Weiser, Idaho. Bangle Bridge and the College Assistant Migrant Program, or CAMP, were an integral guide to her success. The two programs allowed her to get a head start on her degree, receive reduced tuition, and help Giselle and her family navigate financial aid and scholarships, easing the transition from high school to college. Giselle graduated in 3 years with 3 bachelor's degrees in finance, business management, and Spanish, thanks to the programs that were offered her. Currently, Giselle is a financial analyst for Hewlett-Packard, where she began her professional career in Boise. I will now shift to ISU strategic efforts in academics and research. As you know, ISU is the healthcare education leader for Idaho, a responsibility we take very seriously. We had 843 healthcare-related graduates just in 2024. As the leading institution, we partner with local hospitals and clinics across the state and provide clinical training in 80% of Idaho's counties, with 18 clinics and an addition of 5 rural pharmacies. Our programs are the highest quality, building on decades of healthcare and allied health educational expertise. For example, we are proud to be ranked in the top 12% in U.S. News and World Report for our physician assistant program. We continue to expand our healthcare programming to meet demand. Some, but not all, of our new and expanded programs include Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist program beginning this fall, which was recently accredited, I'm pleased to say. Nursing program expansion in Twin Falls and Coeur d'Alene, occupational therapy and nutrition and dietetics growth on our Meridian Health Sciences campus, certificates in mindfulness and online public health, and clinical psychopharmacology, also on our Meridian campus and online. Physician assistant program growth in North Idaho in collaboration with LCSC, and medical laboratory sciences, an online program which grew nearly 400% in 1 year. These programs are having an immediate impact in communities across the state, optimized through educational and industry partnerships. As for other academic programming, launched a few years ago, I'm pleased to say that ISU is committed to continuing its aggressive academic program prioritization process that supports students and workforce demand. Important metrics for these efforts include 26 new degree programs, 49 new academic certificates, 10 new CTE programs, and 31 program discontinuances. As evidence of our commitment to meeting workforce demands, some highlights of new programs and certificates include a BAS in Nuclear Engineering Technology Management, a fully online BA and BS in Secondary Education, a certificate in Paramedic Science with an expansion to North Idaho in collaboration with LCSC, and a certificate in Semiconductor Manufacturing Technology. Meanwhile, research at ISU continues to be a driver of growth and development and solidifies Idaho State's designation as a Carnegie Classified High Research Activity Institution, or R2. ISU was recently also classified as a profession-based high student access medium earnings university. This means ISU offers broad access to students across many demographics with a focus on career-aligned degrees, with students earning above average income after graduation. Importantly, we continue to grow our research enterprise, even in the face of some uncertainty, and received nearly $40 million in external research awards in FY24, a 45% increase since 2018. We focus not only on research at the faculty level, but leverage research as an opportunity for both undergraduate and graduate students. Last year, students received over $4 million in externally sponsored wages, fellowships, and stipends. Through research conducted at ISU, we are leveraging our health science expertise to solve critical healthcare needs. An initiative within ISU School of Nursing will help the entire state of Idaho, especially rural Idaho, where there are health professional shortages in the areas of behavioral health and substance use disorders. A grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration provides an opportunity for ISU to educate students early in their professional coursework to increase confidence and decrease stigma associated with treating patients with substance use disorder. As for the next strategic area of focus, enhancing physical infrastructure, I will briefly outline a few highlights. We are moving closer to a new life sciences facility to replace the aging Gale Life Sciences building. We were successful in receiving $14 million from the legislature earlier this year. We are working diligently on a naming gift and hope to have an announcement later this year. We are currently working on identifying a design firm through the RFQ process to launch planning this fall semester with an anticipated groundbreaking in fall of 2026. For the PA expansion facilities on the Pocatello campus, which received legislative fundings last year, after an aggressive planning and process timeline, we will be holding a groundbreaking this August for the large-scale remodel. On our Meridian Health Sciences campus, we continue to complete site prep work in 2025. However, we are looking to the state legislature and Meridian City to partner on solutions related to access through the state police property to our 23 acres. I am excited for us to launch our student housing public-private partnership initiative also in 2025. We recently contracted with Reith Jones Associates to conduct a feasibility and market analysis with the goal of moving to RFQ status on development this fall. Now I'm very excited to share a new collaboration we are working on with CSI, brought forward by its Board of Trustees and President Fisher, as our partnership and collaboration grows and matures in Magic Valley. The opportunity could potentially mean a new ISU facility in Twin Falls. This co-location will encourage even stronger partnerships between ISU and CSI with shared resources and collaborative programs that enhance student experience and success and will increase our capacity to offer bachelor's and graduate degrees in Magic Valley with even more prominent and physical presence. We are still in the early planning and discussion stages, and if it is viable, we will bring a formal request to the board for approval in the future. We continue to focus on the Idaho Falls campus as it is an increasingly important hub for student recruitment events, community engagement, and institutional and industry partnerships in eastern Idaho. Over the last year, ISU has hosted more than 130 community events with more than 12,000 participants and 25 student-focused recruitment and outreach events with more than 1,600 students in attendance. Additionally, the ISU Idaho Falls campus is used by local industry for training and serves as a central location for education and civic engagement for the Idaho National Laboratory, the University of Idaho, Boise State University, College of Eastern Idaho, K-12 schools from across the state, and various civic organizations. A few renovation projects for FY25 on our Idaho Falls campus include research labs in the Center for Higher Education building, updates to the Tingey Administration building, additional offices in the Bennion Student Union, and updates to HVAC and fire suppression systems. In addition to focusing on the physical infrastructure on our Idaho Falls campus, we are keenly focused on growing and refining our academic enterprise in Eastern Idaho. You can see from the numbers on this slide that ISU Idaho Falls campus is making an impact. We are serving students in our service regions with 1,132 students taking courses from our Idaho Falls campus last year. Increasing our footprint and impact in Idaho Falls has been a key goal of mine over the last year. I'm pleased to have hired our Chief Campus Administrator, Jeremy Green, who brings a wealth of experience in partnering and collaborating with local industry and education institutions. He oversees our work in both eastern and southern Idaho. Specifically in Eastern Idaho, we are focused on our relationship with CEI and BYU Idaho to better serve this important region of the state. ISU will be the public institution provider of bachelor's degrees in the area, and we will expand our graduate portfolio to address critical academic pathways, workforce needs, and partnerships. I hope you will see that partnerships and collaboration is important to me. When we partner, the state of Idaho wins. For example, earlier this year, ISU was the first university in Idaho to sign a super agreement with INL. This agreement is focused on new areas of growth and importance, including critical and strategic materials and minerals and environmental sustainability and security. ISU has also been busy strengthening collaborations with Idaho institutions, including the development of new MOUs and other agreements, including INL, the Idaho College of Osteopathic Medicine, Lewis Clark State College, University of Idaho, Boise State University, the College of Eastern Idaho, and the College of Southern Idaho to expand programs and research. And we are focused on engaging the Bengal Nation. We are reaching out to our growing alumni base like never before with efforts like the Bold Path Forward Alumni Tour. This last year, we held 11 of these events in key geographic locations with over 400 alumni attendees. The alumni tour efforts have led to $700,000 in new gifts from participating donors of this tour. Another example of partnerships, this last year, ISU and CSI were chosen by the American Association of State Colleges and Universities and the Aspen Institute of College Excellence program to participate in the Transfer Student Success Intensive, a year-long opportunity to learn about research and current practices in creating transfer pathways, making it easier for students from all backgrounds to smoothly transition from community college to earning a bachelor's degree. We plan to take what we learn and expand opportunities to all transfer pathways throughout the state and with multiple institutions. We are committed to collaborations that lead to student success for all students. We recently held a summit with the College of Eastern Idaho and are working on plans to implement a wide range of new programs, pathways, and partnerships in Idaho Falls in the areas of health sciences and health professions, engineering and computer sciences, business, technology, and education. Partnerships at ISU lead to educational opportunities for our students to meet workforce demand upon graduation. Last spring, our cross-country coach approached our diesel and site power generation program in the College of Technology for some help rebuilding the ISU cross-country track. Once the team walked the track and realized the extent of needed repairs, what started as an interdepartmental partnership to repair a rundown track turned into an opportunity to involve our community partners. Since the project was going to require a large amount of heavy equipment, Western States Equipment stepped in to provide all the tools needed to get the job done. Our Diesel Tech students, athletics teams, and Western States Equipment all got together and rebuilt the cross-country track. They even let me operate the machinery, though admittedly not for very long. Western States CAT donated all the state-of-the-art equipment to use and have our students train on, which is now incorporated into the curriculum. A local construction contractor donated his time to cut the new track in, and a local engineering company donated their time to do all the engineering work associated with the new design of the track. What we now have is the best cross-country track in the Big Sky Conference and a modern, industry-informed academic program. Lastly, we turn to the fifth area of strategic focus: employee engagement, empowerment, and connection. After years of dedication, hard work, and strategic decisions, ISU will achieve a balanced budget for FY26. I appreciate the hard work of all our institutional community members. It truly took a village to arrive at this point. However, we cannot sit and rest on our success. Each year will bring new challenges and obstacles to financial stability, and we need to be prepared. Last year, we moved ISU from a budget optimization model to opportunity-aligned resourcing, or a forward-thinking framework for strategic institutional growth and sustainability. Through OR, we are focusing on strategic growth in high-impact areas, and I hope to report more on the OR model and its impacts in my annual report next year. In conclusion, before I stand for questions, and having received previous permission from Board President Liebig, I would like to invite President Lori Barber of the College of Eastern Idaho and President Dean Fisher of the College of Southern Idaho to come forward to briefly discuss the current state and impact of our collaborations and partnerships in Eastern and Southern Idaho.
There, now my microphone's on. Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here today to talk about what I feel like is a very important thing for our students. So President Wagner, you rightly said that when we partner, Idaho wins, but really when we partner, it's students that win. And everything I do at College of Eastern Idaho, that is our focus. Everything we do at College of Eastern Idaho. Excuse me, it's how can we serve students better? How can we make more pathways available to students so they can have a path to a better life? So President Wagner often uses this analogy, I do as well. At CEI, I like to think we're building an educational highway. And the more partners we have, like with Idaho State University, the more on and off ramps our students have in order to create that better life for them. Maybe they want to come to us for 2 years, and then they want to take a break before they transfer on to Idaho State University. So I'm very heartened by the summit that CEI and ISU had about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Many people from, many faculty and staff from ISU came up to College of Eastern Idaho. We had about a 5 or 6 hour summit, and we decided on some things, and some of the things we decided on are going to be very, very beneficial for our students. President Wagner already mentioned some of the educational expanded articulation pathways that we're going to have. Those are going to be in education, engineering, business, health science, nursing, AAS to BAS pathways. And we're going to really focus on aligning course content, quality, and rigor so that when our students transfer to ISU, they are coming in well ready to hit the ground running in whatever pathway they've chosen. So that seamless transfer eligibility is something that we're really working on, is going to be very important for the students. Future pathway growth, both institutions are committed to expanding pathways as needed and as the capacity allows, ensuring flexibility and responsiveness to Idaho's evolving educational landscape. One of the things that we talked about that we're going to do that's going to be very important is ongoing program maintenance. This is not just a one and done where we can meet one time and say, okay, well, that pathway is done, because there's always evolving needs, changing outcomes, changing curriculum, and so we're going to meet to make sure we're going to meet on a regular basis to make sure that we are aligned. And so when our students are taking those first 2 years at CEI, they're what ISU needs when those students transfer. We're talking about nursing program expansion, streamlined transfers and data sharing, coordinated advising and support. You know, many times when a student is going to transfer, if they haven't gotten good advising, they're going to be they're not going to be set up well for that transfer. So how can ISU and CEI's advising offices share more data? How can they be working together to ensure that students are being advised very well in those first 2 years? And then, like I said, annual review and accountability. And the focus is really on what is best for that student as we create all of these pathways, as we sign agreements. Again, I'll end with this, just how can we serve students better? And I think we're well on our way with this partnership to serving more students better. Thank you.
President Liebig, board members, thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the conversation today in Idaho State's report to you. President Wagner, I think that the best my folks will let me do is operate a golf cart, so you're ahead of me on that. I've been asked by President Wagner to provide you my thoughts and my perceptions relative to ISU's work in the Magic Valley. Very candidly, prior to January 2024, I was rather pessimistic about the relationship. The 121 miles that separate Twin Falls and Boise, and roughly the 110 miles that separate us in Pocatello, seem to be so large, so immense that we weren't going to overcome the opportunities for students in the Magic Valley. The Magic Valley lags the rest of the state and the nation in baccalaureate degree attainment. And while we perform a vital mission, CSI, absent a very dramatic infusion of state funding to focus us on upper division, new baccalaureate programs, the solution for CSI is partnerships, to look at the system and lean on the system and partners to allow us to solve that challenge. Allow me to be very clear on the point. I'd rather find partnerships than initiate requests for baccalaureate programs to you. But partnerships are a real key part of that. And if we are simply looking for online programs, there are a nation full of partners, and I'm very delighted that ISU is maturing face-to-face, on-the-ground relationships and partnerships with us there in the Magic Valley. A word, we found everyone at ISU to be highly collaborative. And so, although he's not paying me or bribing me to do this, I want a personal shout out to Robert. He's been a true colleague, he's been a true partner, and we are making substantial progress on this relationship. The CSI Vice President for Instruction, Tiffany Seeley-Case, and her academic team have been engaged in very evidence-informed, data-informed discussions to settle on what baccalaureate program is needed. And those teams have collaborated with ISU's counterparts on the curriculum alignment to accomplish the improved access. And I'm going to call out two people in the instructional team. Dr. Adam Bradford and Dr. Cindy Hill with the ISU team have been just as much in the thinking out of the box as my team has been. It's a delight to work with partners. When I sat down to draft my comments, I reminded myself that I have 5 minutes and that I'm from Oklahoma and I talk slow. So I will probably exceed the 5-minute rule, but I'm going to go ahead and try and summarize what my perceptions are in some bullets. Our two institutions are participating in an Aspen Institute-facilitated project to improve transfer and ultimately baccalaureate attainment. I think it's going splendidly. It's going very well. ISU's academic team has been collaborative. They're thinking out of the box, and they're thinking about transfer agreements that are collaborative pathways to baccalaureate degrees that are not just simply articulation agreements or transfer agreements. They are truly aligned curricula pathways that allow students to be successful. Things like a 3+1, they're going to pass out when I say this, but I think we're very, very close to an on-the-ground engineering pathway in the Magic Valley. If they passed out, summon help for them. We're solving problems and we're creating opportunities. All too often, higher education falls back on these hierarchical notions. President Wagner and I do not share that approach. K through 12 through graduate education is a part of a continuum. It's not a hierarchy. I've grown so weary of people thinking that one part of education is more important than the other. Frankly, the educators that I admire the most are middle school teachers that put up with that age of life. If you're a middle school teacher, that's not criticism, I assure you. I appreciate the collaboration. We're focusing also on enhanced advisement, student support, and planned improvement in the physical presence in the Magic Valley for ISU. Perhaps the best way to communicate our shared vision is to share just that, a shared vision that President Wagner and I produced for the Aspen Initiative. I'm so happy that you did not read that because I thought you're going to steal the thunder here. At the College of Southern Idaho and Idaho State University, we envision a seamless, student-centered transfer experience that empowers learners to achieve their academic and career goals without barriers. Our shared commitment is to create a unified educational ecosystem that fosters opportunity. Through strategic alignment of curricula, proactive advisement, and strong institutional collaboration, we aim to increase degree transfer and completion rates, reduce time to graduation, and support workforce readiness across Idaho. Together, we champion transfer pathways that are clear, supportive, and also transformative. Last week, Thursday of last week, we had another Zoom meeting with folks from Aspen. We're, I think, very, very close to measurable goals that will not just take that vision statement and put it on a placard and say we've done it. We'll now move into measurable goals and activating those goals. I'm really excited, and I'm going to catch President Wagner off guard, and I've not made a secret since my arrival in Idaho in 2020 that I'm a transplanted Oklahoman, which means that I really love the University of Oklahoma. My Boise State folks, I know about the Fiesta Bowl, but that means that I like red and white, or crimson and cream officially. And the rival in my home state in terms of football and sort of notoriety is Oklahoma State. So Robert, I've learned to learn orange and black is okay, despite the fact that the rival is orange and black too. So I love orange and black because you've created the opportunity for me to love orange and black. Thank you.
Thank you, President Barber and President Fisher. It's truly a pleasure to work with you both. Board President Liebig, I'll now stand for questions.
Thank you all. Questions for any of our presidents? Callie?
I just want to make a comment that I am so excited about these working together and servicing the citizens and students and the communities of this region. I'm from the Magic Valley, and there was a real need for this. And the Magic Valley is just growing, and it's really important to the state of Idaho from a food production standpoint. I think we're 6th or 7th in the country. So it's really important, and I know the partnership with INL as well must greatly appreciate this. So thank you to all of you and your teams for your efforts.
Thank you.
So can you just give me a sense, where are you finding the soft sand, as you begin this collaboration, where's the soft sand? And where do you start? Because there's so many areas, obviously, where you could.
Sure,
you
I
could pursue.
think in both, and would welcome my colleagues to speak up. Certainly from an academic program standpoint, learning and recognizing what the needs are within the specific geographic area. What pathways do we need to focus on? Really, though, perhaps just as important, if not more important, is removing obstacles to the transfer process. We are really, really good in higher education in coming up with processes and protocols and paperwork and things to fill out and people to talk to. We need to do a much, much better job of making it more efficient and, frankly, a whole lot easier for students to be able to transition.
So I would echo we just have to remove those barriers before we can even improve, we can start talking about what degree programs. That said, I would also like to shout out to our Vice President of Academics and Student Affairs, Angela Sackett. She did a ton of work also with Jeremy Green and Dr. Cindy Hill on making sure that we were looking at data-driven programs that needed to be brought as bachelor's completions to Idaho Falls, and that's where that list where we came up with that list. I would just say, too, that I, too, am from Oklahoma, but President Fisher, they taught me how to talk fast. So anyway, I just couldn't let that one lie.
Mr. Liebeck, could you just give us an idea of some of the barriers that you have identified that stand in the way of what you're trying to accomplish?
Sure, well, I'll just add just a very, very easy one. Getting admitted into both institutions. We need to find a way to get admitted once. And sharing information and sharing data. I mean, our institutions can be on different platforms, different software platforms, different processes. We need to do a better job. We should not have to rely upon the student to do that, to walk from one location to another location with the information. That should be more of a seamless transition with our three institutions. And so that just from an admissions process. Another area I think that's critically important is if we're going to preach and talk about pathways, students need to know exactly what those pathways are. They need to know what classes they need to take when they're being offered. The right classes at the right time, at the right price, in the right way. Whether it's face-to-face, online, hybrid. We need to be able to account for all of those. So to preach and to talk about pathways is one thing, but for our students to know what pathway they're on and how they get from point A to point B in a very specific way. Many of these students are non-traditional students. Many of them are working. Many of them have families. They don't have time to figure this out themselves, let alone if they're first-generation students. So making it easier for them to be able to go from point A to point B.
So Dr. Board President Liebeck, Dr. Clark, I'm going to take a little different approach in answering that question. You and I and many others here have been to Washington, D.C., and you see that map of the metro system. Well, sometimes that's what higher education looks like in terms of how we get from point A to point B. It seems very confusing. We are very good at creating bureaucracies. We are, in the Aspen Institute, we are detangling that and working to create clear constructs of how a student can move from CSI to ISU or ISU back to CSI. There are situations where reverse transfer might make sense. I don't know the answer to this, but I'm pleased that our teams figured out the answer to it. We identified last week that moving transcripts electronically between our two institutions has some challenges. The following morning, my registrar told me ISU's already in contact and they've got 3 solutions to this challenge. So we are not just identifying problems and ruminating on them for years. We are solving them, and I'm just so excited that with the leadership of President Wagner, we're supporting that creativity between the two institutions to solve the problems and to solve the bureaucracy. And I don't have to know every solution as long as I know that they're getting it solved.
Any final questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you, Presidents, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I look forward to going through this annual report in more detail. I'd like to invite I think we have a number of Idaho State students with us today. I'd like to invite you up to the, what is that, a lectern? What do you call that? Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Summer vacation, right? Or I guess probably not total vacation, but it's summer. This is Bill's favorite part of the agenda, where we actually get to hear from the students, because all this is about you. And there's probably no one that gives us better perspective on what's going on the campus today than the students that are going through the experience. So we're really thankful that you're here. What we've done in the past, and I think it's worked well, is just to have each maybe go down from this way and introduce yourself. Tell us maybe where you're from, what you're studying. What else do we ask? What year you are, and dual credit, and whether you, if you're from an Idaho student, high school, whether you participate in the dual credit program, and any other interesting fact you want to share with us. And then, but once we get through the introductions, what we typically do is just open up for the board, and they'll ask you questions, and whoever wants to respond can respond. Does that work? All right, why don't we start down here?
Hi, my name is Joshua McCubbin. I'm going into my senior year here at ISU, and I study political science. I completed, I think, like 6 or 7 dual credit classes in high school and came in with 12 credits.
Where are you from?
Idaho Falls.
I'm Colin McBride. I'm from Twin Falls. I did my first, I got 30 credits of dual credits in high school, did my first year at College of Southern Idaho, and then transferred here to Idaho State. And I'm going into my senior year, and I'm doing my student teaching, because I'm in education and English, student teaching at Twin Falls.
My name is Greg Johnson. I'm a pretty non-traditional student. Excuse me. I'm 34, 4 kids, former military, biochem major. Loving it right now. I don't know where I'm from originally. I think Las Vegas, but prior to the military, I lived in Idaho, and so to me, Idaho has been home for quite some time.
What part of the military were you in?
I was in the Army, sir.
Army. Great, thank you.
I'm Braylee Ricks. I'm from here in Pocatello. I'm a nursing major, and I came in with about 30 credits of dual, and is that all? Yeah.
My name is Angel Pedroza. I am going into my 3rd year here at Idaho State University. I got 12 credits in high school through dual enrollment, and I am majoring in sports and exercise science for physical therapy, and also a advanced Spanish certificate. I'm from Mountain Home, Idaho.
Mountain Home, nice, all right.
Hi, my name is Macy Winder. I'm from American Falls, Idaho, so not too far away. I'm currently double majoring in accounting and finance. I got over 40 dual credits in high school, and then at ISU, I'm part of the ambassador program and on the dance team.
What year are you going into?
I'm going into my 2nd year.
2nd year.
Technically a junior, but.
Yeah, all right. Board members, it's great. It's a real diverse group so that's great, terrific. What questions do we have? Bill, go ahead.
So the first one I like to ask is, and if you can, in any order, we don't need to go down the line. But for each of you, you got kind of different stories of how you got here. But one of the responsibilities of this board, as you guys are probably aware, is we need to capture the best and brightest in the state of Idaho, right? And get them to go to places, to our institutions and give them every opportunity. And so I'm always curious, first of all, why ISU? Why was it a fit for you? Why did you choose it? And then what were the, the obstacles or opportunities or other things that kind of led you to Idaho State?
Yeah, go ahead, Angel.
So I am a first generation student and never planned on coming to school. My whole family has only ever worked hard labor, blue collar jobs, and at a advising session by our school, I think it was Higher Education Day, I got talked to by an advisor and I was forced to go. But after talking for 30 minutes, actually caught my attention. And it just really interested me, and she talked about all the stuff you can do and really grow into your own person. And coming from a small town and feeling like I was fit into this one mold I was gonna follow, I realized that was not the case at all. And ISU was the place for me in that sense, not only because it was the place that talked to me the most, but it was also the place that had my program, which is physical therapy. And everyone I've ever encountered has been so helpful, and they've just shown me how to help myself grow and lead me in the right ways and stuff like that. I'm also taking the initiative to grow the Hispanic community through one of the clubs I'm in, and they've done nothing but support me.
Colin, yeah.
The primary reason I went to ISU is probably the financial. It was one of the cheapest options, which is why I chose it, because it was really easy for me to do that. But also, coming from Twin Falls and College of Southern Idaho, a lot of my credits, most of my credits were very easily transferable. So the accessibility with that is really well, which is why I'm really excited about, the CSI and the College of Eastern Idaho partnerships that they're doing. I think that's really good.
And let me just throw in for all of you, one of the things we hear at all of the institutions that makes us happier than anything else is actually, I think sometimes there's a reluctance to say that it was the cheap option, it was a cheaper option. That's actually an awesome answer for us in the state, right? That's the state winning in each of our institutions. And so that was actually going to be a follow-up question, but if I can throw that in for the others that are answering is, financially, how is it working out for you? That'd be great to hear.
Marcy.
Yeah, I would say what really drew me to ISU was the scholarship tier that they offer for students. It just makes it really easy for students that put in a lot of hard work in high school to maintain really good grades to be able to continue going to school for a pretty low price. It's kind of like a reward system, and even those that maybe have had a few harder classes or, they're still able to get really good scholarships to be able to attend ISU, which I think is awesome. What mainly drew me to Idaho State is I heard so many amazing things about the College of Business, which is what I'm studying right now. And all of the professors there, I've just heard so many friends and family talk so highly of them. And I was super excited to be able to get into my first class and be able to interact with them. And from day one, all of those professors I've had have truly cared about me, and they've cared about my dreams and my ambitions. And I have some that are working to try and get me some internships, and I'm just really excited about
that. For me, once I was getting ready to get medically discharged from the military, I was trying to figure out where to go next. And I saw that ISU offered an honors program, and I've always had a philosophy to make life as difficult as possible for myself. And so I investigated that, and I met with an advisor, and they were incredibly helpful. I won't name him because he'd be upset if I named him, but he was incredibly helpful and really helped me kind of along this pathway of what I should study, what courses I should take. Because I'm a first-generational student as well. My parents never graduated high school. I had no idea what to do. Financially, luckily I was injured in the military, so my school's paid for. But it is a very cheap option, very affordable. And that's one of the things I love about it up here. And I've had some incredible opportunities here, absolutely incredible. Working with professors, the chemistry department, biology department, I've absolutely loved every aspect of this school. My wife has had amazing experiences as well here.
I chose ISU mainly because it's close to Idaho Falls, so family stays near, but I don't have to live with my parents. Also, scholarships were a big factor. I was able to maintain good grades in high school, and I have my college paid for, which is always a plus. I also came to ISU because of their nuclear engineering program, which I studied for a year and then switched off of just because I realized it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but just hearing from professors and people who had graduated from the program, I heard just a lot of positive things, and just coming to visit the campus, I was impressed. I'd say ISU, and especially the professors now that I have in the political science department, they have gotten me a lot of opportunities. I currently do a research internship for a company in Massachusetts that I just got from a professor, so it's been very fortunate. Yeah.
I came here kind of for the same reasons as everybody else. The scholarships here are amazing. I've had, like, the GPA scholarship is the best one. And then my family's also here, but I've also been able to move out and still be close enough to home. And then I've also heard amazing things about the nursing program, so it all kind of led me here.
Great. Sean?
Thank you. My question is for those that have dual credits, and this group pretty significant credits. Did you have any trouble with those? Were you able to transfer all of those into ISU, or did you lose some in the process? And if so, what were the challenges to bringing all of those credits over, if there was challenges?
I didn't have an issue with any of my credits transferring over. The counselors at my school, so American Falls High School, they were able to help me pick a college that were going to work with ISU, get all my credits to transfer. They have super good relationships with all of the colleges in Idaho, so that was super helpful. I would say probably what was my biggest challenge with the dual credits is I didn't know exactly what classes I needed to take to be able to complete all my generals at ISU. I just had no idea where I really stood with that. So I wish there would have been a way for me to know, like, oh, I don't need another one of those, like, health electives or different things to be able to help me get further along in my education sooner.
Yeah, just another thing. I think academic advising and like trying to figure out what classes you need and what credits you need to take is already difficult, like just within one school. So trying to like do that with multiple schools is especially difficult. So I feel like most people always have like one class. Like I think I had an English class that didn't transfer. So just really like focusing on trying to bridge that gap would be really helpful. But I also didn't really have a whole lot of issues with my credits transferring.
And remind me, that English class, you started CSI, is that right? Is that what you said? Yeah. And it was an English class you took there that didn't transfer to Idaho State, yeah. Anyone else want to?
I only had one class that didn't transfer. I think it was like a speech class in high school. To be honest, I don't remember exactly, but I just know that I knew I took it through Northwest Nazarene University. That's what the credit was offered with, and I know it didn't transfer to ISU. But that was the only issue I had.
Dr. Clark?
Macy, did you say you just finished your first year? Did you also participate in launch?
Yes, I did participate in launch, and I was very grateful to have received that scholarship. It's helped me out a lot.
And your field, I've forgotten now what you said your field is?
My field was accounting and finance.
Great. And I think everyone else, no one else just finished freshman year, right? Did you also have launch? And what is your field again? Nursing? Great, thank you.
My little brother is going to CI right now for welding, and he also got the launch scholarship, and it helped him a ton. I know that.
Callie?
Yes, thank you. You all have on your Bengal shirts or orange and black. That's so exciting. And all the new buildings must be exciting for students. And I was just curious about how you could help us try to encourage, or any ideas you might have about how to encourage students to go on. Like, think about when you were in high school and what, or in the military, or your experience, how can we encourage other students to think about going on? Is it financial? Is it advising? Is it, I know a couple of you are ambassadors. that's probably helpful. But any of your ideas would be helpful for us.
I mean, I can only really speak from my personal experiences, but it sounds like collectively advising was probably one of the biggest challenges. I had no idea what to do, and I'm confident that's a pretty common consensus among students that don't pursue college or anything further with their education. Military, they talk a lot about it, but you have to really hunt down the resources to find it. And from what I remember from high school all those years ago, it was pretty similar, in Las Vegas at least, that if you want to go to college, you're kind of on your own, you'll figure it out. Unless you're one of the stellar 4.0, everything's great, then they hunted you down. But for most regular folk like me, I had to find it all on my own. And so some way to find an advisor, resources that are readily available to students that don't need to be hunted down would be helpful.
Yeah, maybe another way to ask the question is, who was the voice or the voices in your life that set you on this direction? It's sort of a different way of asking the same question. Or to come from just inside.
I mean, I was always pushed by my parents, but I wanted to be rebellious, and I never listened because I was like, you guys didn't do it, so why would I? Because I didn't really know what to do or how to go about anything. And so the advisor really helped me and told me that college isn't just one career and that it's so much more than that. And now that I've been here, I came in initially going for occupational therapy and switched it to physical therapy soon after. And a lot of my friends that I know have like switched majors entirely, from like doctors to physical therapist assistants and like so on. And so I think the advisors, especially here at ISU, are really great at reaching out to the students. And I think just reaching out more and more can help them out a lot, because that's what helped me the most and really made me confident in my decision to even pursue college in the first place.
I think it comes down to a TikTok campaign. That's
I feel like a lot of students that don't decide to continue going to college, it's more so of like being afraid of not knowing what to do or how to go about it, like some of the other students have kind of mentioned today. So being a part of the ambassador program, we do a lot of outreach, like going to high schools, putting on different events. We call a ton of students, send emails. We send handwritten letters. We're trying to expand our outreach capabilities and find ways to help students more. We've been talking with like the director of admissions and some of the people that work in our office with us. And we're just trying to continue to make students feel like they have someone there for them to answer any questions they need. And I feel like we get a lot of responses from students and we're able to help them out quite a bit. But I think that that's most important.
Yeah, Bill.
So one of the things that you know Idaho State's working hard on is expanding the opportunities for on-campus living, right? That there's a lack of that opportunity. Did all of you, or have all of you had the opportunity to live on campus, and what's your take on kind of campus life and the need at Idaho State for more on-campus housing and different on-campus housing for students?
Well, Josh and I work for ISU Housing.
Oh, so I asked the good question.
Yeah.
All right.
So
I put it on the tee for you, man. Let's see you hit it.
You know, we're excited about new university housing. I mean, honestly, obviously working there, we feel that it's valuable. People do better when they live on campus, like academically. That's just what happens. We also have a lot of like opportunities that comes with living on campus. Like we have lots of events and all these things. We try to get people to come live on campus because it's fun. You meet so many more people. So really, just having more opportunities to live on campus, because it is like full. We have a lot of students here. That would really be helpful, beneficial for all the ISU students.
Did you all live on campus at least at one point? All but one? Or all two? Yeah, you're a little
I
different story.
applied for it, but me and my wife were like number 435 on a wait list, and so we didn't make it very far in that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think, Bill, to that point, the biggest mistake a freshman can make is living off campus. I know because I made that mistake.
You turned around, David.
one of the other questions I'd like to ask you, so I said it at the beginning, we want to keep the best in Idaho, in our schools, right? But then we want to graduate them, and we want you to stay in the state. And I guess I'm curious how many of you are planning on, if you can, finding jobs and living, whether it's in this valley or somewhere in the state of Idaho, living in Idaho moving forward. Please, Ed, one at a time.
Be careful how you answer this,
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Well, I don't want to talk too much, but I definitely want to live in Idaho. For me, Idaho is home. That's why the second I could come back, I came back. I love it here. I love the people here. I've volunteered in a lot of hospice care, and I want to work in the healthcare field, and I know there's a huge need for it here in Idaho. And so wherever life ends up taking me for graduate school, I want to come back home to Idaho and use whatever I learned to be here in my community.
For me personally, I want to get my year of experience in nursing, and then I wanted to travel nursing for a year or two, but after that I'll be back in Idaho.
I don't know, I feel kind of bad for saying, but as much as I love Idaho, and I've lived here my whole life, and I want to go and get my doctorate in Idaho still, but my end goal is like ending up in Central Oregon. I just love the coast and the terrain, but literally like all my family lives here, so I'd probably be here more than I am now. But yeah.
Well, Oregon may want to join Idaho, so they may come full circle.
It won't let me go.
I also plan to stay in Idaho. I do want to go to graduate school, whether that's here on this campus or I might end up going to law school for business law. I would plan to go to the U of I campus in Boise to complete that. But yeah, I love Idaho. I think there's so many opportunities here, and I think it's really nice that a lot of the professors and Idaho State has really good connections with community businesses and partnerships to be able to make it happen for students to stay here.
I have no idea, but I know I probably won't be in Idaho my whole life. I maybe live here a short time after graduation, but I plan to move elsewhere for a time. Maybe I'll come back. You never know. But I really have no plans yet.
Yeah, I'm staying in Idaho for the time being, doing my student teaching. It is a little hard to be a teacher in Idaho right now, I think. And it's not the least paying state in terms of salary, but it's not the best either. I think I'd like to stay in the Pacific Northwest, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet.
We certainly need teachers in Idaho, so I hope you stay. Yeah, Cindy.
Oh, yeah, Colin, you said that Idaho's not the best place to teach. You mentioned the money. Are there other issues in Idaho besides that?
I think, I don't know, I'm only speaking from personal experience and, my bias. I think there are some issues in terms of diversity and equity and inclusion that we're facing right now as a state. And maybe that's a federal issue, maybe that's a state issue, I'm not really sure, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Any final questions? Well, thank you all. You're all great ambassadors for Idaho State University, and we appreciate your time today. Thank you. Okay, I guess I'd like to invite faculty and staff, I think, are both represented in this group. I'd like to invite you up to the front.
Aren't you all giving up vacation time right now?
Well, welcome. You must be proud of your students. really, great, as I said, great ambassadors for the university. So why don't we do the same thing that we did with the students and just start at this end? And we probably don't need to hear how many dual credits you have. But
Wonderful to see, oh, there we go, some familiar faces. I'm Karen Appleby. I am a professor in our College of Education in the Department of Human Performance and Sports Studies. I teach mostly upper division undergraduate courses and in our graduate programs, master's and doctoral level courses. I previously served in various leadership positions here at ISU, and I'm very proud to say that I just finished up my 21st year teaching here at ISU this spring. I'm not from Idaho. I am from Indiana, so go Pacers if you're watching the playoffs right now. But I say that because I think it's important to let you know I chose to come to ISU because when I came here for my interview in 2004, it was very clear, two things were very clear to me when I talked to the faculty, the students, and the administrators, that this was a place that's about serving students, and it's about student success. And ISU is also a place that honors and values excellence in teaching. And that was something that was very important to me as a faculty member and has stayed constant throughout my entire career. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to be here today.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here and for having us. My name is Amanda Zink. I'm a professor of English in the Department of English and Philosophy here. I was hired in 2013 to fill the line titled Multi-Ethnic, Minority, and Native American Literature. So that is what I teach. And I'm also the current chair of the Faculty Senate.
Good afternoon. My name is Echo Marshall, and I am the newly hired Director of Tribal Relations. I've been in my role for a short 3 weeks now, and I'm very happy to be here. I am an enrolled Shoshone-Bannock tribal member, and I have resided on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation for over 30 years. Born here in Pocatello, I am a graduate of Idaho State University. I did receive my college education while residing on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, working full-time, and being a mother of 3, so I know all of the challenges that some of our students face. I spent over 25 years working for the Shoshone-Bannock tribes. I was formerly the public affairs manager and worked in business development for enterprise and agribusiness corporations and spent over 24 years doing marketing and leadership for our Shoshone-Bannock Casino Hotel. So I'm happy to be in this new role. Hi, Linda. I attended the Idaho Indian Education Committee meeting for the first time in this role, but not for the very first time. I had attended previously in my role as the public affairs manager. So thank you all for being here today.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Karen Evilia. I'm a professor of biochemistry and the current Faculty Senate Vice Chair. I teach in the biochemistry and chemistry curriculum. I've been at ISU, I'm going into my 20th year. And actually I'll echo some of the things Karen said. Before I came here because ISU cares about student success and student learning, and that was very important to me as well. But I'm also a researcher. My expertise is extremophiles. So I research extreme microbes in different environments, and Idaho is awesome for extreme environments. A lot of studying material here, so it keeps me busy all the time. And I'm good.
Hi, everyone. I'm a proud Bengal graduate. My name is Dana Godet, and I work over in the Meridian area at the ISU Health Science Center. And I'm the Assistant Director of Enrollment and Student Services. So the student populations that I serve mostly are the prospective students. And so I work pretty closely with high school students that are interested in our health profession programs that are competitive, But I mostly work with the transfer student population, so specifically College of Western Idaho and Boise State students that want to come to school at ISU Meridian. And then I also am an academic advisor for dual credit associate degree students. So I was excited to hear some of those questions earlier today about dual credit. We this year are graduating approximately 200 students with their associate degrees and certificates this year. So we're really proud of those gifted and talented students. I've witnessed some really amazing things with that student population, but there have also been some challenges. So I'm excited to talk with you more, and thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for being here and inviting us. My name is Melissa Newlin. I am a clinical assistant professor for the School of Nursing. I have affiliate status because we do partnership with the St. Luke's in the Twin Falls area. So I am the site lead for the program expansion with St. Luke's at Twin Falls. I am also an ISU alum. I also graduated from College of Southern Idaho, went through their nursing program as well as Idaho State University. And I'm excited for all the questions today.
Hi, my name is Jenna Lords, and I serve as admin support for Information Technology Services and the Instructional Technology Resource Center. I also served as staff council president this past academic year, and I'm also a first-generation student, and I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here. My name is Dave Smith. I am a clinical assistant professor in the College of Technology. I teach health occupations classes, mostly anatomy-based courses for our health occupations programs in the College of Technology. I'm also a ISU grad and was drawn back by the faculty that taught me when I was here. So, thank you.
Great, thanks, Dave. And I believe we have one participant online.
Yes, thank you. I'm joining you from Atlanta. I'm attending a conference on campus law enforcement. And my name is Mark Pino. I'm the director of public safety. Our public safety office, we have officers who work in Pocatello, Meridian, and Idaho Falls campuses. So I cover all of those areas. And I came from Colorado Springs, where I was chief of police for a university in there for 5 years, and I've been in law enforcement for 20 years.
Great, thank you, Mark. Board members, who wants to start? Sean?
Well, thank you. I think I heard an invitation from Dana regarding dual credit, and I think it's just an incredible resource that Idaho has grown and evolved, and I see the opportunities and am interested in breaking down barriers. So from your perspective, what could the board do to make it easier for students and for the institutions?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I think students and parents were very, very excited about that extra $500 addition to their advanced opportunities funding. And so for the students that planned things out perfectly, they were able to complete their associate degrees with no charge. And that is such a huge, I guess, financial relief for a lot of families to be able to save that time and that money on their college education. And for some students, provides them with confidence and gives them kind of that boost that, hey, I can actually do this. College is okay, and this is where I belong. So I think from a go-on standpoint, I think dual credit and advanced opportunities can sometimes give students that extra boost and motivation to keep going. When it comes to challenges that I witnessed, I guess maybe what I'll do is start by discussing some of the challenges, and then perhaps we could brainstorm together about what the board could do to help students and parents navigate those challenges. But our students mentioned one of the greatest challenges is just navigating the whole world of dual credit enrollment. It can be quite complicated, and I know that ISU and other public institutions in the state have done a great job, especially with that dual enrollment software that's really helped, I guess, alleviate some of the challenges with just the enrollment process in general. But yeah, I think the challenges that I'm observing are in relation to students' well-being and mental health. I think a lot of kids, especially the ones that are most suited for dual credit, tend to be a little bit type A, perfectionist, very hard workers. They are very gifted and talented, but they're also very stressed. And so as a dual credit associate degree advisor, the sooner I can connect with those students, the better. And so for the student populations that I serve, I work closely with Renaissance High School and another school in the Treasure Valley area, Meridian Medical Arts Charter High School, that offers an Associate of Science and Health Science degree through ISU. But we make it a requirement for those kiddos to meet with me at least once a year. And we talk about, you know, what classes make the most sense for you based on your desired field of interest and the career you want to go into. And we do those structured advising meetings and help them navigate college at the high school level. And so for those kids, they're usually okay, but I can tell that they're stressed and their parents are stressed. There's just this huge urgency to save time and save money. And so then by the time they do get to college, they've completed all their general education courses, and they're 18 and 19 years old, jumping into 3,000 and 4,000 level junior and senior classes, and perhaps some of them may not be academically ready or mature enough to handle a heavy course load like that. So I do worry about those students when they step foot on our campus. I encourage them to slow down, to pump the brakes, to maybe consider adding a minor so that they have some extra, what I call cushy classes to sort of alleviate the challenges of those hardcore classes. And so as an advisor, finding them a full-time schedule as a new incoming student can sometimes be a challenge because they're done with all of their general education classes. So I really just want students and parents to understand that they can relax and enjoy college and not feel like they have to finish a 2-year degree or I guess finish a bachelor's degree in 2 years. There's that pressure to do so. And for some of our programs, especially our competitive health profession programs, it's not possible for them to wrap up their bachelor's degree in 2 more years because they still need prerequisites in order to get into our competitive health profession programs. So the money, the advanced opportunities is there. Students want to take advantage of that opportunity. But I believe that some students are starting college very stressed out and some of them with pretty low GPAs. So I'm concerned about that.
I think that's an excellent point. That's something we don't consider enough. I mean, we all remember when we went from high school to college, right? It's a big step.
Well, did you see all the profs nodding their heads?
Yeah.
While she's saying, I think I would ask the profs, is that kind of, what you guys see sometimes too?
I can't imagine when I was a freshman taking.
I'd be a mess. Are you kidding me?
3,000 level courses, that would be.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I'm thinking of one young man in particular who came in with all of his gen eds and wanted to be an English major. And if you've taken any literature classes, you know there's 100 pages of reading is not unusual for one 3,000 level class in any 2-day-a-week course. And he had to fill his semester with 4 of those. In order to be, or 3 or 4 of those classes, right, in order to be full-time. So if they dip below the full-time status, then their scholarship is at risk. So then they're left taking a bunch of courses that they, as Dana was saying, may not be intellectually mature enough to handle. And even my most intellectually mature students would still struggle with 16 hours of an upper division reading and writing load. As a mother myself, my kids went through the local high schools here. I encouraged them not to do dual credit. I encouraged them to enjoy high school and to be ready for college when they get to college. And one more point for that is, our gen ed numbers have been suffering here at ISU because so many of our students take their gen eds elsewhere, which has real implications for departments that rely heavily on those gen ed courses for their credit hour generation. But the other thing is, we in our departments are very careful about who we put, which teachers we put into those 1,000 level classes. We put the best teachers, the most engaged teachers, the most charismatic teachers, who then can help those students make the transition, help them decide, is this field the right major for you? And we are losing out on that opportunity when so many students come in with their gen eds already checked off. So it does have far-reaching consequences, despite the upfront benefits of perhaps saving some time and money.
Giving me PTSD. I remember I took, I predate AP classes, but I took an advanced English class my senior year in high school to prep for college, and my first college paper came back with a C on it, and that wasn't a 300 class. You know, it's like, and my high school teacher said, "Well, you're not in high school anymore, pal." You know, so I get that.
Yeah, Bill?
Kind of a general question. Love to hear several of you at least respond, and that's, so ISU has been an institution in the last few years on, going through quite a bit of change in like a whole bunch of different ways. Obviously, leadership transition, budgetary transition, I would say kind of a tonal transition, and truly not just in Pocatello, but on all the campuses. But I'm just kind of curious your perspective on, it seems like from the board's perspective, the institution's in a very, very different place than it was a few years ago, that the trajectory is very good, that esprit de corps kind of tone, if you will, is positive. But I'd like to hear from you guys. Are you, where do you think the institution is relative to where it was? How do you feel about kind of direction? Are you seeing those positive changes with your students, with the campus, with the community, kind of in an environment that's, admittedly difficult and getting more difficult in a lot of different ways? But just, it's a general question, but would love to hear answers.
Yeah, I've been at ISU for 10 years, and in that 10 years, this is the third university president that I've seen, and I would agree the trajectory is upward. It looks good from my standpoint. It doesn't mean that everything is perfect yet and that everything is worked out, but I would agree that the trajectory is upward from where I stand. In the College of Tech, we have some unique challenges. I think the trajectory there is good also, but my kind of hope is that we continue to facilitate that, the leadership in the College of Tech, working, really closely with the university and I guess protecting our investment a little bit as the College of Technology. So, but yeah, to echo what you're saying, I do think that the trajectory is good.
I would agree with that as well. Coming from another state and another university, being here for 3 years, I think a lot of what drew me to Idaho State is what we've seen in that positive trajectory forward. And a lot of what we are doing, I think, is both reflective of the work that we're doing, but also in the leadership. Within my department areas, we've seen more support in the things that we're doing in the last year than we've seen in previous years. And so I want to echo that statement as well.
And just to add to that, I think just walking around campus structurally, this campus looks different than it has for a long time. It's beautiful. The buildings, both on Pocatello campus, Meridian, and what we have planned that President Wagner talked about, that's exciting. But emotionally on campus, it feels hopeful. It feels very exciting. I'll tell you, my students in class, my undergraduate students this spring, this is a group, and you just heard from some amazing students, about their experiences. These students are outstanding. They're excited. They're leaders in their fields. They want to be back in the classroom with each other. It's been, I just stepped back from an administrative role back into the classroom, and it has been really fun. And so thank you for asking that question, because it feels really great to be at ISU right now.
And I'll just add one more note. I'm really excited about our current enrollment growth. I think our admissions and recruitment team is doing an outstanding job. And I'm also really excited about our transfer partnerships and the transfer pathways that we're working on. I work most closely with CWI and Boise State, and so we're working on a few MOUs with them in our health profession programs. But I'm excited to see where that goes, and hopefully our enrollment just continues to grow.
You can leave that on. I was also going to say, yes, I'm super excited about the direction we're headed, because coming from a student's perspective, it was an okay experience, but we've made leaps and bounds with our program. We've made collaborations with the community colleges. We've made expansions. We're now expanded in the last 2 years across 4 campuses now for our School of Nursing program. We've been able to add, I think we've almost doubled our enrollment numbers for our accelerated program. We've just been able to have the support that we've needed to expand into those rural areas that are really important for nurses to get into, and it's just been a great thing, and I just see us moving so much further forward too.
And I'd like to say, since I joined Idaho State University in 2021, I've seen the campus community as a whole evolve in the right direction. I think we're making great strides forward, especially under President Wagner's leadership. It's been very exciting to watch him engage with the campus community and the community as a whole.
I can obviously give a tribal perspective. Even being very new in my role, I had the opportunity to sit in meetings with our Fort Hall Business Council, our tribal leaders, and former presidents. And I don't want to say it was negative. I think there were good intentions there. There just wasn't a lot of action. It was a lot of good discussion, but a lot of those ideas just didn't come to fruition. And after initially meeting with President Wagner last spring, immediately following, the Shoshone tribes were invited to participate in the commencement ceremonies for the very first time, which is amazing, but it should have happened a lot sooner, and we participated again this year. And I can say, speaking on behalf of our tribal leadership, that they have been very impressed with the positive things that have happened since President Wagner has come on board. Things like creating more culturally inviting public spaces on campus. Those are some of the projects that we're working on. We're currently working on a space within the Rendezvous building that's centrally focused for our Native students, but also inviting to our non-Native students as well. And also just recently approving the MOA with the Shoshone tribes and doing the flag raising ceremony. Those are just a couple of the initiatives, but there's a lot of action that has happened over this past year, which has been very positive and very good to see, not only as a tribal member, but of course now in my new role and the creation of my position here at Idaho State University. I think just further goes to show President Wagner's leadership and his willingness and really his passion for building relationships with tribal communities.
Yeah, I know he's made that a big point of emphasis when he's spoken to us, so it's good to hear that testimony about the effect it's having on with the tribes. And I was at the commencement where they participated, so it was pretty cool.
Other questions?
Can I add one more thing?
For sure.
So as a representative of the faculty and faculty senate, things are on the up and up, so that's good. We still are experiencing some communication issues and, let's say evening how we all feel about the way things are working at ISU. But it's overall increasing, it's getting better. Because I was here 20 years ago, Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay, things are much better than that, okay? Okay.
Coming out of the pandemic, well, I'll just say, I was concerned about just the level of preparation graduating high school students had in terms of being ready to go to college, because there was so much learning lost during that time. I'm just interested in what you're seeing now. We've been out of it for a few years. What's the level? What are you seeing in terms of Idaho students who are matriculating here? Are there any areas of patterns of gaps that you think we need to address within our K-12 system?
Actually, I'll start that off. So one of the things we saw during the pandemic was we couldn't have labs. So I teach a lot of labs, obviously, and we couldn't do those in person. And then when we could do those, it was kind of a weird dilution thing, to pardon the expression. When the high school students then came in after that period, they lacked common skills that they would have gotten as an in-person classroom. And as those students went through our curriculum, we had to keep playing back and forth, like relearning basic skills in order to bring them up to speed. Normally they would have been there, but now they were not. So the nice thing, though, is now that the pandemic period has kind of I don't want to say past because it isn't, but whatever. Now that we're not sequestering or having to do this weird dilution thing, students are catching back up. So that's good. However, I'm seeing more of a demand for them wanting to be online. Now, I'll tell you my personal opinion, I am not really in favor of online education because I'm a hands-on kind of gal, right? I'm a biochemist. You can't really learn that online. However, I see the utility for online for certain classes, you know what I mean? But for lab skills, it's not the best. But that being said, I think we're coming back to where we were before the pandemic.
Anybody else want to comment?
Yeah, I think in English is, of course, what I can speak to. I think we're still seeing at the 1101 and 1102 level still quite a deficiency in both reading and writing skills over where the students had been previously. So when I teach freshmen, I have started to spend a lot more time with basic reading instruction. And by basic, I mean college freshman basic, things that I would not have had to spend time on in the past, how to look for context cues in a textbook, how to use the headings of a textbook to help guide their reading, and having to do basic comprehension checks in ways that I haven't had to do before. And with the writing and sort of work in general, there's a lot more requests for support, extensions, negotiations with deadlines, but overall, and this is with all of the students that I see, not all the way through our PhD students in our department, a much greater need for mental health support as well. And I imagine that that's in part coming from those few years that they would have been in K through 12 during the pandemic. But I think overall, what I hear from my colleagues and what I observe for myself is that the students are needing more and more mental health support than of course we as general faculty members are equipped to give them. And I know that our counseling center is operating at max capacity in terms of what they can do for our students.
I want to actually go off of that a little bit more. We did notice a little bit of a lag from COVID, and It's starting to get better, but that is one of the biggest things that we notice in the nursing school is the mental health and the accommodations and the excessive extensions in that. There's definitely an increase with that. One thing that we evaluated that within our program, and we just recently implemented a self-wellness class in the first semester of the nursing program, just so that we could build resilience and help this beyond, so when they get into nursing, because nursing has a high rate of burnout. And so we recognized that that was a problem, and how could we fix it? So we implemented this wellness class to build resistance, to carry them through not only their schooling, but into their career as well. But we do see it is starting to get better, I've noticed, because we were spending a lot of time on, reviewing APA when that should have already been known coming into the program, but it is getting better over the years.
I would just echo the comments that have been made already. Resilience, I feel like, is one of the biggest issues that I've seen with my students. Asking for chapters to be read, and it's too much to read, or it's not in a 2-minute social media format, right? And I say that a little bit in jest, but it does feel like it's hard to engage a student for more than a few minutes because the resilience is less than it was maybe before COVID. Maybe it's just a social media era that we live in.
It's just this thing right here.
Yeah. But I hope it's improving. I teach mostly freshman level classes, and it is difficult to get the students to engage with the subject beyond just Googling something.
Thank you.
That's an area that impacts public safety as well in terms of resiliency. Ari, I can tell you that our responses to students undergoing mental health emergencies is still really high, and similar. I don't know if it's pre-COVID or after COVID, but it definitely has, I think, exponentially impacted students' mental health. COVID did, and the isolation, and they're still struggling to interact with each other in ways that they didn't develop those skills during COVID.
Thank you. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Any final questions from the board? Okay, well, thank you all for your service to Idaho State, and thank you for being with us here today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So a couple housekeeping items. This basically concludes the agenda that we had for the day. I assume they're going to figure out a way to get us all to the hotel. I know some of you probably have vehicles, but I'm going to be looking for a ride. All right. The shuttle will be leaving the hotel tonight at 5:45 for a 6 o'clock dinner at the University House. So that's the next. What's that? Oh, so are we leaving? I think
Leaves the hotel.
I think we're leaving from the hotel. And then for those of you who weren't here when we went into session after lunch, we did make an agenda adjustment. So tomorrow we're going to begin at 8 a.m., but we're immediately going to go into executive session to finish up the work that we started this morning. And we'll begin the regular public agenda at 9 a.m., which is on the original agenda. So that's the plan for tomorrow. Any final comments from the board? Okay, with that, I'll adjourn for the night. Thank you, everybody.